most VCs watch and listen for very carefully is where's the top engineer talent going? Where are the engineer startup operators looking to go? And that typically guides a lot of investment thesis across Silicon Valley and abroad. Well, it's no different inside the special operations community. We had 20 years of sustained war and conflict, and that talent, some of them were like, I want nothing to do with government. I don't want anything to do with defense.
All right, what's up, everybody? I'm your host, Tyler Sweat. Welcome to another episode of All Quiet on the Second Front, the podcast where boring defense talk comes to die. Really excited here to have a longtime friend, someone I've admired tremendously in the market. And we got Joe Musselman, comes from a couple different places, BVVC and, some stuff we're going to tell you about. But first, I just want to say, Joe, thanks for taking some time, brother, to spend some time over here.
Awesome to be here. I'm really looking forward to this, Tyler.
Yeah, man. All right. So I've had the benefit of getting to know you over the years and spent a bunch of time together scheming and coming up with ideas on how we're going to save the world and bitching and griping and sort of everything in between. For the folks out there who don't know you, who are you? What are you up to? Why are you up to it? What's that all kind of look like? Get them up to speed.
Yeah, sure. So, well, first off, born and raised in Chicago. And so if anyone's around the Midwest, I'd love to get to know you. Secondly, joined the Navy with every intention to become a Navy SEAL in 2009, 10, and 11, and then suffered a pretty wicked injury. So I was out. I was the 20th man in my family to serve in the military, going all the way back to the Revolutionary War. So long-standing tradition in my family to serve. But when I didn't get to serve the way that I wanted, I had a pretty big chip on my shoulder to make sure that service continued. And so I went on to create something, a schoolhouse. It's a foundation called the Honor Foundation. And we've put around 4,000 operators through 10 campuses over the last decade. This year is our 10-year anniversary. So I'm very proud of that. That chip on your shoulder can be very productive, right?
Unbelievable foundation, man.
And Tyler, I'm sure a ton of your teammates have experienced the program and or have gone through at some point. But it's really something remarkable. As I transitioned out of that, I talked about this yesterday with some folks asking me, how did I make the transition from, being a nonprofiteer into venture capital? And how'd you make that transition? I said, well, it was more of a translation of who inspires me and who do I want to be around forever, right? So if you think about it, special operations community is the 0.001% warfighter in the world. And when you think about their mentality, their attributes, their principles, things that they get inspired about to protect and defend, and why they began to serve in the first place, it's because they wanted to give their life to something much bigger than themselves, right? Truly, it comes down to the spirit of service, right? That's why they're there. When you think about a parallel community, now obviously they literally give their life if they need to something much bigger than themselves, that being our country. But there is another category of excellence of people that have similar attributes, things that, folks that are, again, probably the 0.001 percenters are in fact successful founders. They don't give their life literally, but they do metaphorically, right? They absolutely give their life metaphorically to something much bigger than themselves. Their social life, their family life, everything is revolved on something they hope to bring in the world. So to me, it was a translation of who inspires me, who do I want to work for? I do not do well advocating on behalf of me, but I do really well advocating on behalf of people I believe in. And so I just went from 40 operators and 40 founders in a classroom, 40 fellows in a classroom, to 40 founders, now 50 plus founders in a portfolio.
I love the transition, and I love the translation versus transition, right? I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. So I'm going to pull on that thread a little bit.
Sure.
And say, cool. So, we've made that translation from, sort of the operational viewpoint that you started with into the more sort of like nonprofit, the Honor Foundation, into, venture capital and sort of building a portfolio of founders. What what have you seen? You've had this unique viewpoint of watching sort of tier one
Mhm.
come out of a community, helping bring them into another community and sort of putting the lattice in place to help them be successful. That's a really interesting sort of intersection
Yeah.
for you to kind of be playing crossing guard at. So, what's that next translation look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well said, man. The one thing that most VCs watch and listen for very carefully is where's the top talent going, right? Where's the top engineer talent going? Where are the engineer startup operators looking to go? And that typically guides a lot of investment thesis across Silicon Valley and abroad. Well, it's no different inside the special operations community. I call it the three strike rule, where we had 20 years of sustained war and conflict. Fought at the highest levels for nearly 2 decades around the world, and that talent. Based on my experience with the Honor Foundation, watching thousands of operators transition, you will agree with this. Some of them were like, I want nothing to do with government. I don't want anything to do with defense. I don't want anything to do with X, Y, and Z, fill in the blank. Well, what happened was the three strikes. Well, one, Putin invaded Ukraine. That changed everything. Then I started to hear a lot of callback from the founders from the operators who had made their transition, saying, "Hey, man, like I know that you're investing in national security. What company should I go into?
Yep.
Who can you connect me to?" Then strike two, right where we had the submission of Afghanistan back to the Taliban. So that was strike two. Now I'm getting hit up daily. Hey man, who should I be talking to? Where should I go? What tech should I be looking at? So there was this calling to the spirit of service again, where they thought they could escape it, but they can't. It's in you. You can't change what that is, even what you're doing at Second Front, right? You're running a high growth technology company with a background that you've translated from service to now, SaaS. And so for me, when I had that strike too, I started to really pay attention and go on a more formal listening tour, where I began talking to folks inside the defense sector. This was in 2022, 2023. And what I realized is that there were two things that were desperately being asked for that folks couldn't figure out why it didn't exist. So there's an entity that's been investing on behalf of certain agencies for a really long time. It's quite inspiring. It's been around for nearly 20 years, over 700 investments. Our nation's stronger because they existed. And I told you 2.5 years ago, I said, Tyler, where is that for special operations? Where's the fund in the field for special operations? And the second thing was, well, where is that YC for defense and national security? And that was what we discussed at length that day down in Texas. And so over the last 2 to 3 years or so, I've been listening and learning about the intricacies of both of those avenues and what it would take to create something like that. And then strike three happened with Israel and Gaza. Now I've never seen more operators trying to come into this community, and some of the smartest people in the world are trying to get into the national security and defense sectors now because they can see what's coming. So you bundle all that over the last 3 years of my life, 50 investments later. Now this fund has a remarkable team attached to it, and it's called Bravo Victor Venture Capital. And we're very honored and blessed to have you as a founding sponsor of something that we are calling SchoolHouse.
I think one, nobody listening should be surprised that when Joe walked me through his idea for sort of
Yeah,
a YC in defense and why didn't this exist, that I barely let him finish before saying, "Hey, we're in. Like, however we can help, put us to
hundred
work
percent, hundred
because it
percent.
matters, right? Like, it's the ability to take noise out of the ecosystem and put solid signal and dial tone back in is is sometimes really, really difficult to see the opportunity. But
Yes.
when you find it, you've got to jump at it. And, with that, pop the hood a little bit. And, there was a good tease on sort of like, what is Schoolhouse? How do we,
Yeah.
we've talked about sort of like three translations
Mm-hmm.
and then now take that down. And what does that practical application kind of look like? Where does that rubber start to meet the road? The
Sure.
The theoretical gets into
Sure.
physical.
Well, the first thing is the fund itself is very important to understand that it's entirely separate. So after I listened for nearly 2 years on this idea and concept, it was clear that there needed to be a fund in the field where the filter went as follows. Okay, so I get inbound 2 to 3,000 opportunities a year. What's our filter? Well, the tip of the spear is also the tip of the funnel, meaning, okay, does this impact special operations right now or in the near future? Okay, got it. Does it also have a broad DoD application? Got it. Okay. Third, does it impact the commercial sector partnerships that matter most to those other two entities, meaning special operations and our national security around Department of Defense? If that's the initial filter, and then we go into the deeper diligence with both lenses, and we invest at the speed of investing. So that makes us very different than a YC. So I don't want to get those two things confused. We are a venture fund, and what we do is when we invest in those companies, we're going to tranche them together and we're going to send them to SchoolHouse, right? And SchoolHouse is a 7-week, mostly remote, hybrid platform where they are spending 1 week with each other, which you are invited to, and that will be launching outside of special operations in Tampa on April 2, 3. We were oversubscribed in 24 hours. It was completely booked up by all the people that we want to come and impact our founders. And what that looks like, we call it the C3 community. We call it there's capital, customers, and community. And so the one thing that I know you will agree with, because we've also, thrown back a fifth and a fire around this conversation as well, is there is a sophistication around capital raising inside of the defense space that has just been a lack of education. If you have been a remarkable servant to your country, you are most likely not going to have all the qualities and traits that make you a phenomenal fundraiser, right? Just naturally, there's a exuberance of humility that comes from this community, not hubris, but humility. And so for me, I noticed that right away that some of the greatest ideas are getting overlooked simply because they don't have a capital framework to go out and raise dollars effectively. And now there's all types of arguments that I've had to overcome for that, but just, let's take that as it is. So one, capital is what it is. We want to not only be first in, because we are an inception to seed stage fund, but we want to be first in, and then we also want to help you raise, right, with capital introductions up the capital stack. And so for our fund, we focus on inception to seed, and we follow on big at the Series A. And then we have a capacity and an opportunities fund to invest at the Series B. So we can be with you throughout that journey, all the way from inception to seed through Series B, and we have the capacity to do that. The second is customers. Your first customers are very important, obviously. And so for us, if we can help onboard some folks through the interaction and group together, just as we did our founders, those initial customer interactions onto a platform like SchoolHouse that were vetted, that know they need what we have, and vice versa. Now we can take some of where that rubber meets the road off the table. And lastly is community. This is by far, out of all the YC founders that I spoke to, this was the most impactful thing of their experience. And so I call it the Defense Innovation Theater. It's a theater because there are bad actors and there are good actors. And so we just want to find those good actors. Tyler, you are one of those good actors. So many folks you've had on your show are remarkable actors and actually have been invited to come to SchoolHouse for April 2-3. Just go through Tyler's.
Saw a bunch of familiar faces there. I was pretty pumped about it.
That's right, man. So that's the C3 network for SchoolHouse. And we are going to carefully tailor this network to make sure no bad actors are allowed kind of into this ecosystem. And Admiral William McRaven will be our founding faculty member on April 2-3, and he'll be going through 21st century leadership, moral ethics and morality and decision making. So we're excited to have him kick off as founding faculty.
It's going to be a pretty impactful experience, like, for everybody who's fortunate enough to attend.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Where as you think about sort of the 3 C's and bringing all of this together, what has you the most excited? If you look out, and I know it's always challenging, sort of like when you're in the throes of standing something up that's new, you're sort of in this 3-foot world.
Yeah.
But pull back pull back from that a little bit, look out 12, 24 months, like what has you, the most excited or, nervously optimistic?
Yeah, so there's two things that come to mind when you say that, nervously optimistic. One, I would really like to infuse 10,000 special operators from the community into high growth technology companies. Now, there's a hidden agenda with this that obviously won't be hidden much longer when I actually talk about it. But there's a great thinker and philosopher, modern day, that talked about different types of world powers and how we consider world power. And there's a third world power that's brewing and growing right underneath our nose. And we don't even think of this third power as a state actor. We think of it as all technology founders in aggregate make up a third world superpower. So, okay, that was disturbing to me 3 years ago. Okay, so if we have this aggregate of technology founders moving and we have this Apollo 2 moment right now in American history and around the world where all of these founders are going to hope and try to build things in the direction of national security, I sure as hell care about the moral fiber of those leaders.
Yep.
So look, I have officially had, my chief of staff told me a couple of weeks ago, I officially had my 1,000th call with someone that was going through the Honor Foundation. Every Friday, I've got a block of time reserved to talk to those fellows, no matter what. And when I had that conversation, there's a hidden agenda that I would like members of this community and their depth of service to be at the helm or inside decision-making roles of technology companies that will be impacting our national security. So that's the first part of that answer. That's what gets me most excited to get out of bed, is the thought of 10,000 operators inside of the helms and operating. I mean, you are a perfect example of this, Tyler, right? Exactly this conversation. I just got the goosebumps because you are a perfect example of what I'm talking about. People that are ethically and morally and directionally sound about why they get up every day to do what they do. So that is my hidden agenda around the talent infusion in the direction of national security. Without question, that community has earned the right, and they will work their ass off inside of companies to do whatever it takes, right, to make sure that we feel protected. That's why the first value of our fund is to protect. I don't want people who come into our fund to not have that leading them throughout their day. That's why they exist. That's the first thing. The second part of the answer outside of the talent transition into this space. The second part of this answer that is super inspiring to me, that gets me out of bed every day, is our increased national security. That's just plain and simple. We imagine a world where citizens can get up and feel safe going after the things they love across their work and life. Like that, to me, it's not this thing that we got together as a team and thought about the world that we imagine, but we believe very deeply in our constitution at the fund, and our vision is crystal clear. And so for folks that come here and interact with our fund, this is who you'd be interacting with. We really imagine this world where people feel safe accomplishing the work that they know and love. And that I know that's just not a reality. It's unrealistic to think our world will always be safe. But I'm sure as hell going to get up and work towards building institutions and building companies alongside founders who can imagine that world and hope to build products and businesses in the direction of making America feel safe and our allies.
As I get ready to sort of ask you the last sort of structured question here, I just want to, again, I know I say this a bunch, but commend you, because I think many could easily have sort of, had the injury, had the issue, and
Mm.
sort of been like, oh, all right, well, like, whatever, and sort of walk.
Right.
And the commitment to the cause and the growth and the creativity and the passion to not only, one, sort of light the path on how do people transition, what does that look like at scale the right way? Two,
Yeah.
you know, be a leading sort of champion of bringing the right type of capital in and backing the right founder. So you help them cross the bridge, then you're sort of getting them squared away, getting them the kit, and then bringing SchoolHouse together. Now you're starting to build teams. You're effectively created this entire new ecosystem. So hat tip on that, because I think there are a lot of folks who like to talk about it, and you have done it, and it's
Yeah.
really
Thank
impressive to watch, brother.
Thanks, man. It means a lot coming from you. Here's the thing, though. Like, uh, you still to this day have not given up serving. You're serving right now, just through a translated mission and vision, right? Through Second Front, and so despite my service, ending abruptly, I was designed to serve. I come from a family of servants. I come from a family of teachers and social workers and doctors and nurses. And so I was raised with this kind of certain mentality. It doesn't leave who you are. So look, God had a different plan. You want to make them laugh, you should tell them about your plans. I did. Uh, and so I was never meant to be a SEAL. I was meant to serve the SEAL community. I was meant to serve the special operations community. And so it's very easy to get up and do something where you feel aligned. And this is something else too. That my initial fund is fully deployed, and it was a generalist fund, and around a third of the investments were national security. I felt most aligned with myself when I was working with those founders. Right. So there's nothing about me, Tyler, that's a generalist. I want to be hyper specific, hyper focused, and I want to become a subject matter expert. And so I've been trying to do that over the last couple of years, and having tons of support from within the defense investment space and national security space. It's a little different. People have their hand out to support with open calls and communication and mentorship and coaching. I'm not one to stick around and not jump learning curves for very long. And so I appreciate all the colleagues and my peers in this community that have been supportive of helping me build this. The fund is a massive effort. It's a large 9-figure effort to go out and pull this off. And we've had tremendous success. We launched on July 4, and it's funny that we launched on July 4 of last year. We've had incredible success despite the environment. And now we're on track to close July 4. And obviously, that's not just symbolic. I wanted it to be that way. I have to do things that are kind of aligned.
Yeah, I love it. All right, last question.
Yes,
This
let's
is
do it.
the only real structure question I have, and it's
Yes.
a king for a day question. So you can take this sort of any direction, because like we've talked about, we talked about the community, right? We talked about founders and capital. We've talked about transition. We've talked about sort of all of it. Um, but Joe, you're king for a day. You get a magic wand. You can wave it and sort of change anything, and you don't have to caveat it, right? Like, your intent will be met. What's the
Yes.
one thing you sort of pick and hit with the wand, and why?
The top talent in the world would be inspired to serve our agencies and our Department of Defense and government the way they did in the 1960s. That's what would, I believe, would change the fabric of the West and
Yep.
society as a whole if top talent stopped going to places like TikTok and started going and serving missions like Palantir and Second Front and Figure and Anduril and if we could get that top talent re-inspired again to serve our nation in a different way, the whole world would change. If that one thing happened, the whole world would change.
I love that answer. And I'll say, as always, you've got me fired up and ready to run through a wall. So
Well, I can't
thanks
wait
for
to spend
spending
time with
thanks
you,
for spending
man.
some time together. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you down at the opening of Schoolhouse, and to celebrate some success in person together, man. But thanks for spending some time here, and letting the world know a little bit more about what you're cooking.
Hey, real quick, folks, go to bv.vc to learn more about the fund, and then also if you would like to be part of Capital Customers community conversations, go to school.house and fill out the form that we have there for folks from the community.
Yeah, and we will drop those in the show notes as well, so everyone's got them.
Awesome.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, everyone.
Boom.